Už točíme. Aha, takže začni, řekni ahoj.
Hi everybody.
Hello everyone.
Today we're going to answer a question that somebody posted very recently about how to gain weight on a fruitarian diet. It was only a few days ago we got the question, and we're going to give our 2 pence worth on it, 2 worth. Yeah. Do you want to start or should I?
No, you start.
Okay. Well, I think in many ways we're probably not really the right people to ask about putting on weight because we're both so skinny. But well, I think one thing we should address is the question of whether you really want to put on weight, because I think it is actually natural for us as a human species to be skinny. Of course, having muscle is a different thing. You can put on muscle even though you're skinny, but I don't think that it's natural to be putting on too much weight. So if you're not carrying, if you're not like really underweight, then I don't think you should be worried about putting on weight at all. And as an example, I myself, I am about 176 meters. That's about 5 foot 10ish, 5 foot 9, 5 foot 10. I don't know, somewhere around there. And I weigh about 53, 54 kilograms, which a lot of people would consider very thin, but I personally think that it's a normal weight. And you know, people will comment and say you look too skinny, blah blah blah. I don't feel like I'm too skinny. I feel like my weight is what it really should be. So I would first of all question whether you really want to put on weight, and forget about what other people say. If other people are telling you too skinny, don't worry about that. I can say a lot more, but I want to let Greta say something if she wants to.
Yeah, I like to say, address the skinniness itself in general. I was also always all my life skinny. I have always some remarks about it, like you will break in the wind, you will get lost without funeral, and so on. And it never affected me because I felt good in my body, within myself, so I have no reason to pay attention. I actually took it more, if anything, like a compliment, because when I grew up, the Twiggy was in a fashion. Twiggy was the fashion model who became to be example for other ladies how they should look like. So actually the being really skinny in those years was in a fashion. But you know, things are changing. But so when I become fruitarian, I have designed weight. I have constant weight since I was 13 years old, and it's varies from, well, I say constant, but it varies from 46 up to 52 kilograms. But when I have 52, I feel like not so comfy anymore in my body. So, because I always ate really light, I could not stand much grains. My main food was always fruit and vegetable. If I could eat it raw, I will always prefer eat it raw. So also I was vegan before I went on raw fruit. So for me it wasn't such a big change in any way. My way, I actually lost some weight when I became a fruitarian in the beginning. And I think that's very common, that might be common for a lot of people, actually in the beginning, because there's big changes in the body. Body actually starts healing, body finally getting its natural food, so it's like welcoming it and starting working on all the repairs. and therefore we can lose some weight because there's a lot of energy needed for that healing. And because I went very skinny, but I wasn't even aware of it because I never worry about those things. I never worry if I have enough weight or if I have enough nutrition or any of that. I felt good, I felt great, I was uplifted in all ways. When I start eating fruit, I have no reason to worry about nothing. And I think today media really brainwashing people into chubbiness. It's the healthy way to look. Actually, in country where I come from, Czech Republic, to being chubby is healthy. If you're skinny, that's not healthy. You would be more accepted if you chubby than if you skinny in that country. So it's also called chatting. I want to say Asians. Look at the Asian people. Indians, people from India, people from all the other Asian countries. They are skinny. You know, if you go to those countries, you can see that for yourself. And why is it? Because they eat healthy, much healthier than Western diet. Western diet, people are obese. In general, you know, the higher percentage of people are even morbidly obese. It's a pandemic which it's not spoken about. So we should more concentrate it on eat well and don't eat food which is not good for you, and that should be your worry, not your weight. If you feel good within yourself, if your bones here doesn't sticking out and your ribs when you stretch like this doesn't stick out, if you really don't look like you just skeleton, there's, I think, nothing to worry about. No.
Yeah, I want to add also that, as Krita said, it is quite normal to be losing weight. I mean, most people, nearly everybody that goes onto a fruit diet will lose weight because, generally speaking, people carry too much weight. And what can happen is that you could go underneath your ideal weight for your body size, for your height, but with time you'll build it up again because your body has to break down the stuff that's in there that shouldn't be there, get rid of it, and then it rebuilds up new again. So eventually you will reach your ideal weight if you just continue eating fruit and eating, of course, when you're hungry. You don't really. I think the whole idea of wanting to put on weight because you feel like you need to put on weight and eating more in order to do that, it is not a good idea. It's not something you should be doing. So you just keep eating, but when you're hungry, don't let yourself get too hungry. You know, don't go to extremes with it and start fasting all the time, or dry fasting, as a lot of people do. And these things, which are good at times, but don't make a habit of it. Just keep eating normally. Make sure that you don't go hungry, and eventually your body will stabilize at the weight that it should be at. And I think that's really the best advice, if we gave advice, that we could give. Yeah.
I also said how much I weigh, but I didn't say my height. So I'm 168 centimeters, and how much that is inches? Inches.
Let them work it out themselves.
Yeah. Use the Google if you're really curious about it, because I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And what upsets me a little bit, people do worry too much about things which are not really important for us to worry about.
I do want to say it is normal, as Krita has also already pointed out, that if you look around in society, virtually everybody you see out there, especially over a certain age, even younger people these days, they will be overweight. And I forget the statistics for if you're going to be considered more obese, then you only got to carry something like 20% or some maybe even less of what your normal body weight should be, which is not very much. So actually most people are obese that you see, even though we tend to use the word for people that weigh very, very much. Like 100, 200 kilograms or whatever, they're morbidly obese people. They're not just obese. Most people are obese. Nearly everybody out there is overweight. Nearly everybody.
And that's why, because we compare things constantly,
Yeah.
suddenly if you among all the chubbiness,
Yeah.
You may appear amongst those people too skinny.
That's
But
right.
in reality,
Yeah.
The truth is again
Yeah.
upside down.
It is.
So,
Yeah.
to being really skinny,
Yeah.
to have a more body of the teenage child
Yeah.
than of some really like curvy developed,
Yeah.
for women curvy this way, for men curvy this way.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
And of course, the story is also different. If you've suffered from some kind of eating disorder, if you've suffered from some kind of eating disorder, and you've been anorexic or something, then that's a whole different story about
Different
putting on
story.
weight, because obviously you've got to put on weight. Obviously you've been doing something wrong. So that's something. Well, we're not talking about that now. But there are obviously stages where you do desperately need to put on weight. But even so, in those situations, I think that going on an all-fruit diet and eating when you're hungry, when you're really hungry, and not letting yourself suffer with hunger, eventually you'll reach a normal weight, even if you come from anorexia. But that's, yeah, I do understand. And I have a lot of sympathy. Anybody that has an eating disorder and has that kind of issue, I understand. There's so many difficult things that we have to face in life, and I understand that putting on weight can be really difficult. If somebody said to us, put on weight, and we really thought that we should, I think it would be very, very difficult for us to put on weight, because we eat and we don't feel hungry afterwards. And if we eat too much, then we start getting low in
That's
energy,
no
and we
good.
can't do anything. So yeah.
It's not healthy even overeat. It
No,
doesn't
it's
matter
not,
what
it's not.
what food you put in your
Yeah.
body. And
Yeah.
we just go by our appetite. We eat fruit which appeal to us also. We don't eat fruit which we just don't find attractive.
Yeah.
And to us, and it's I again want to address what upsets me most, that people stopping themselves, sabotaging themselves, going forward because they worry about such things. Do I have enough calcium? Do I have a vitamin B12? I'm too skinny. So many people I heard telling me, I was on the fruit, but I stopped eating fruit because I got too skinny on the fruit. I felt good and everything was great, but I'm too skinny. And this is sad. This is very sad. Because, and showing us, also I want to address, don't worry what the public says. Again, if is it working for you,
Yeah.
just live for your own life, not
Yeah.
for life of others. Because it's not normal to live life for others. You have to learn to listen to your body and just go by that. If you start really rapidly losing weight, it's not because you eating only fruit. It must be some other problem you may have you wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's so true. And just one thing that I want to go back to my own weight. I used to be, on average, I suppose, I was about 60 kilograms for most of my life, up until about maybe 20 years ago or something. And I really, around the time I met Peter, and I started consistently eating fruit, and then my weight dropped to what it is now, 54, 53 kilograms, 55 kilograms sometimes. And it's been constant. you know, I have not dropped down. I don't go below that. Only when, if I'm fasting or if I got a juice cure or something, then I might drop a couple of kilograms. But generally speaking, I don't like to let myself get too low. I don't like to, certainly don't like to drop below 50, which I've done a couple of times when I fasted. And but I always gain weight again just by resuming my eating the way that the way that I had done before, the way that I continue to do. So I always regain and I come to the same level, and I'm at where I am now. And I think, you know, for someone our ages to be the weight we are is very, very unusual in society. Most people at our age will be weighing at least another 20 kilograms above what we are, I think. Yeah. So, yeah. Sorry that we really probably not answering the question the way that you want us to answer the question. I'm sure if you asking the question how to put on weight, you feel like you want to put on weight or you need to. But I hope that we've given you some food for thought.
Yes.
And you may possibly reconsider the notion that you need to put on weight. Of course, if that's
That's right, because this is the truth. If you want to worry about something, worry about eating the right food.
Yeah.
And listen to your body intelligence. That means eat when you're hungry.
Yeah.
You know, rest when you're tired.
Yeah.
Sometimes people even overwork, and then they lose too much weight too.
Yeah.
You know, you have to learn to work and rest too.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, if whatever you wanna add to this, or say have some additional question to this, what we just said, just feel free to
Ask
away in the comments.
Yeah.
And we are happy to.
Yeah. Either we address you in the comments, or if it's something that we think, oh yeah, we should have talked about that, we'll make another video later on talking about that particular, whatever it is that you're addressing. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, just enjoy your life, go for a walk in nature, and love yourself, take care of yourself, and love everything, because the love is only we need. So take care of you.
Bless you.
Love you all. Bye.